So we will go ahead and get started. Again, welcome. Thanks everybody for showing up. Today we have an excellent speaker, an excellent presentation. As always, the Wednesday webinar, if you guys have any suggestions for topics or speakers, please let me know. You'll get an email about this later, but it was decided yesterday that we are going to cancel our December Wednesday webinar. It's pretty close to the holidays, so we're just going to skip December and we'll pick the series back up in January. You'll get more information about that as we go. So today's topic, lesson learned from best practices for communications coming from the UNLV campus shooting back in December 2023. So run, hide, fight. That was the text that went out to all students, staff, and faculty on December 6, 2023 in a mass shooting at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas that resulted in 3 people being killed and another injured. The shooter, Tony Polito, was a disgruntled college professor who tried to get a job at the university but was denied. In the rampage, he marched onto the university campus with a 9mm handgun and 11 loaded magazines of ammunition. Polito entered the Lee Business School and opened fire, killing 3 professors before he was shot and killed by the police. Jeff Donaldson, who has direct ties to UNLV, tracked not only the event, but the response by the police, students, the media, and others, and has compiled a fascinating and thought-provoking presentation about some of the lessons learned and best practices displayed during this tragic event. Today, he will offer this insight into the true challenges of communicating during a major emergency event. So Jeff has worked as a crisis communications, emergency management, and emergency public information specialist for the past 16 years, serving in that role at various sites and organizations throughout the United States Department of Energy. He has 20 plus years in the newspaper business where he covered sports, business, crime, and education. In the DOE, Jeff first served as a public affairs specialist at the Nevada test site in Las Vegas. He worked 9 years managing the test site's Joint Information Center and Emergency Public Information Program, recruiting and training, developing technologies and procedures, and helping to implement some of the very first social media-based EPI responses in the complex. He also served there as a public information officer for the test site fire and rescue department. At Argonne National Lab, Jeff spent 2 years developing crisis communications curriculum, conducting emergency case studies, and supporting emergency exercises throughout the country as a member of ANL's mock media teams. Jeff is a former U.S. Air Force veteran, a father of 3 grown children, and an author, having published 1 nonfiction and 3 fiction books. He hails from Charleston, South Carolina, where he attended the College of Charleston, and he currently resides in Las Vegas. So everybody give a round of welcome to Jeff. Jeff is having a little bit of computer difficulties himself, so I am going to run the slideshow for Jeff. So let me pull that up. Jeff, the mic is yours if you want to say anything while I'm pulling up the presentation.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, David. I really appreciate it. Hopefully everybody can hear me loud and clear. Thank you for that intro. Yeah, and some of you may know me. I've actually been out there a few times with the CSEP program, having done mock media for some of your exercises and having instructed some courses. We always look forward to coming out to Lexington and to Frankfurt and doing the work that we do out there with you. But this is a unique situation that occurred. Every day, I'm sure all of us are similar in that we go online and we read the news or we watch the news on TV when we get home or whatever. We get our news from various sources, and a day won't go by where we don't hear of some type of shooting event. Obviously, and all of them are serious, and all of them are obviously, it's tragic when someone gets killed. But as I like to say, it doesn't mean quite as much to you probably until it happens in your backyard. And that was kind of what happened here. My wife is a mentor for student teachers at UNLV. My stepdaughter is in the PhD program down there. My daughter is getting her bachelor's degree down there. So we have family down there. And so obviously, as part of the student faculty and student body, you're dialed into their emergency communication systems. And as such, as soon as something happens, we're the first to hear about it. And so can you imagine you're sitting there and suddenly these texts come flashing across your phone sitting in your living room, good probably 20, 22 miles away from the UNLV campus. And it just basically says, run, hide, fight, and then tells you there's an active shooter. And so it was a really alarming, very disturbing kind of situation. And once we had established that our family members were safe, I put on my crisis communications hat, and I can tell you that I've actually had a little experience at Argonne doing some case studies on different emergencies. We did a huge report on Hurricane Harvey and the impact social media had on notifications during that event. We've done a big study on the Hanford nuclear site up in Washington and an accident they had up there, on how social media and the media in general kind of function there. So, once I had established that our folks were safe, I put my hat on and decided, this could be a really interesting opportunity. And of course, it's also, it's kind of gut wrenching. You're seeing this thing play out, on the text messages that are rolling across and the news reports and whatnot. So I wanted to put together a little study, a little report, and I've done this once or twice before. So I'm really thankful that you folks are letting me come in and present this to you today. Again, I know you're in Kentucky and I'm probably about 1,800 miles away. But you know what, again, we see this every day. And so I'm sure some of the themes and some of the things you hear will be or sound very familiar to you. And again, just as we get ready to move forward, I want to apologize. My camera is not working. I don't typically have Zoom Workplace on my computer. So when we uploaded it, we were able to get my melodious voice, but not my pretty face. So, but you saw it in the intro there. So thank you for that great introduction. And again, if you have any questions, I do see the chat. So please don't hesitate to chat something in there, and I can certainly jump off topic real quick and answer your questions. Or if you want to wait till the end, I know that David has set up a Q&A for us to talk a little bit more about anything that you're interested in. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and move forward. December 6th, 2023, last December. What happened? Next slide, please. So a gunman opened fire on the campus of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. It was quite a shock. As I said, the texts came rolling across: run, hide, fight, active assailant, or active shooter, I think they said, on the campus. Not much to go on the first few minutes. Obviously, we were all just quite stunned that it was happening here. We would find out very quickly that the shooter had walked into a business school building on the campus, which is up near it's near a popular area, what we call the Maryland Parkway, which runs just parallel to the Las Vegas Strip, and yet about a half mile, 3/4 of a mile off of the Strip. But essentially walked into the school and opened fire. And as you can imagine, the folks in the Lee Business School went, scrambling for their classrooms and hiding under desks and barring doors. And doing what you would anticipate in any sort of run, hide, fight situation. Next slide, please. So at 11:45, the reports of shots fired basically sent the police swarming onto the campus. We had the University of Nevada, Las Vegas has their own police force, Las Vegas Metro Police. Fortunately or unfortunately, has quite a bit of experience with this. You folks might have remembered a year or two prior to this, we had a huge shooting at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Was down across from Mandalay Bay near the airport. I think it was September or October a couple of years back. An individual knocked out the windows at Mandalay Bay and opened fire on a concert and killed a lot of people and injured many, many others. And so unfortunately or fortunately, the police had some experience with dealing with active shooters and active assailants in big areas. So this was, unfortunately, the thing they had feared the most. Students and faculty, of course, were quickly alarmed, like we were, by text that said, run, hide, fight. The police would later say that the shooting started on the 4th floor at the UNLV Lee Business School. And the gunman apparently went to several floors before he was killed in a shootout with 2 university detectives outside the building. Now, initially some of the initial reports coming out of this were pretty frantic. I mean, there was a report of multiple shooters. I guess in that area where the Lee Business School is at, there's several other school buildings, and there's a student union building and whatnot. And as you can imagine, the echo of the gunshots firing out made it sound as if there were perhaps other shooters, other locations. My initial reports were that stay away from the student union because the person was in there shooting too. So you can imagine, I mean, just the first several minutes are just a flood of, what's going on. Next slide, please. So again, the police are swarming, folks are running for the hills. You've got folks in Lee Business School barricading in the classroom buildings. You've got folks at the student union barricading. Again, no real clear picture as to how many shooters and just exactly what's happening. No way to know if the guy's just, moving from hallway to hallway, just opening fire on people or what. It took about 40 minutes to finally give an all clear. All clear in that, as far as they could tell, the threat was taken out. The two detectives shot the suspect outside the Lee Business School. I think they were able to establish pretty quickly there was not another shooter. So all clear was given to the folks in the immediate area. Of course, it wasn't over at that point, right? You've got folks all sheltered in place. You don't necessarily open up all the doors and say, "Come on out." So Las Vegas Metro and Unionville Police, in coordination with the FBI at that point, spent the rest of the day, really almost until 8 p.m., sweeping and evacuating each of the buildings on the university campus. So, we do a lot of these drills and exercises, right? We practice active shooter, and if you can't run away, then you hide. If you can't hide, then you need to fight, and all these things. And typically the exercises are over a couple hours later, and you're ready to go. Imagine this happened at 11 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock at night, some folks were still barricaded, waiting on the police to come and clear them out. So it was a lengthy process, and of course at that point, the only communication they're having is via telephone and or text messages back and forth with folks. So they were seeing kind of what I was seeing in terms of media reports and other things, and really, hunkered down for 8 hours in a classroom trying to figure out whether, the thing was over and what was going to happen next. So during the aftermath, there 3 other people were transported to a local hospital. They had a couple that had anxiety attacks, and unfortunately 2 police officers who are somehow injured while they were doing their building sweeps. Next slide, please. So what do we know now? Well, it was the shooter was identified eventually, not initially. It took about a day, about half a day, but was identified as 67-year-old Anthony Polito. Was a former college professor who had taught at East Carolina University in North Carolina, and he had moved to Henderson, Nevada, a few years before. Police say Polito had tried to get a job at UNLV, but was rejected. If there is any silver lining in any of this, and certainly I shudder to use the word silver lining because 3 people were killed. The silver lining was he had specific targets he was looking for. He wasn't just, coming in with his 150 rounds of ammunition to open fire like the folks at the Harvest Fest shooting. He had some people he wanted dead. And so he had a list of targets, and he was moving from room to room and floor to floor looking for those folks. Later, and this was sort of an interesting footnote that really never got any traction, and the best that we heard was that it was an all clear, but he was also later found he mailed 22 letters of an unidentified white powder to other faculty members at the school and at other schools around the country. So I did follow up on this. The best they could find from a couple of the envelopes, they did some testing on it. They didn't determine what the chemical was. It wasn't hazardous. So he was trying to scare people as part of his campaign. Next slide, please. So the media, obviously every major media news organization along with state local news carried coverage of the shooting. And of course, anytime something like this starts, it's going to get major news because, initial reports were that a lot of people were killed. There were a lot of shooters. There may have been more than one shooter involved. And of course, again, the reputation, unfortunately, of that Harvest Fest shooting that was so tragic, is still, rings true with the media. They would dial in anything in Las Vegas anyway. It's a pretty big city. And of course, it's a popular tourist destination. So, it was over everything. But I dialed into Associated Press, NBC, Fox News, CNN. I was looking at all the different news organizations, and it was interesting that NBC News seemed to be among those who actually interrupted programming to deliver the initial reports. Not everybody, interrupted whatever they had going on, but NBC News was all over it. I mean, they interrupted whatever was being broadcast to give us updates. I think they ended up interrupting their normal broadcasting about 3 times for updates on the shooting. There were a couple of midday updates on some local channels, but for the most part, it was all national stuff: CNN, Fox News, AP. But again, everybody was waiting to see what was happening there. Next slide, please. So the police, at about 1:52 Pacific time, about 2 hours and 7 minutes after the shooting was reported, Las Vegas Sheriff Kevin Mayhill held his first briefing with reporters near the campus. And essentially all he told everybody was that the threat was over and that victims were being transported. So it was really interesting. I mean, there was a lot of social media flying and a lot of news reports and a lot of conflicting reports about how many people had been killed, how many shooters were involved, the extent of the injuries and the wounded. But he didn't really say a lot. He got up, he spoke. The UNLV police chief spoke, and they basically said the same thing, and that was the threat is over. Yes, we have some victims are heading to the hospital. The shooter's been killed, and that's it. And so 2 hours in, this was really kind of it really to us it wasn't enough, and I'll tell you why. It was a trickle down effect of what was happening out there. First off, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas campus is located less than a mile from Harry Reid International Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the country, especially over the holidays. They essentially closed the airport down for about an hour while this was going on, out of fear that bullets and gunfire might make it to the airplanes. So, literally everybody at the airport, all they're hearing was a shooting over at UNLV, and they're closing the airport. But imagine you're hung up now trying to get on a flight, and you don't really know what's going on. The same for the roadways. All the roads around the Strip, as far out as Interstate 15, which runs north-south through Las Vegas, California, all the way up. And that was closed as well, which was a good mile and a half from where the campus was at. So imagine you're out on the freeway coming in or going out, and now you're stuck out there. And again, if you've got your phone with you or your radio on, you're hearing what's going on. But you've so just again, tens of thousands of people being basically shut down and put out of commission for a little while this is going down. So at this point, though, 2 hours in, they're still not telling anybody anything. And so as you can imagine, that created a bit of a natural information void that left a lot of folks to speculate. Next slide, please. So in all the media coverage, NBC News appeared to have someone on the inside of the investigation, and they were continuously reporting new information for anyone else. So this was really interesting. They seemed to know that they knew how many people had been killed at a time when a lot of the social media was saying as many as 26 people had been killed or shot. They seemed to know for sure that there was 3. They knew the killer, the shooter was killed. They knew, I think at one point they knew in advance of everyone that the person had applied for a job at the school. So they seem to have somebody perhaps in a law enforcement position feeding them information, which is maybe another reason why they kept jumping into their their normal broadcasting and giving us updates. But what did happen was Las Vegas Metro would then respond, and that seemed to be driving the news. So rather than Las Vegas Metro coming out and saying, we know there were 3 people killed and that we have another person wounded and the shooter's dead and whatever else, they were just sort of responding to whatever NBC News was posting. So not sure if that's necessarily the best way to do that, but clearly that's what was driving their release of information. As you can see from that tweet there, they finally tweeted out, according to investigators, scene, we have 3 deceased victims and 1 additional victim in critical condition. Again, that didn't come out until NBC News actually reported it. So next slide, please. So again, social media was active. Again, a lot of social media posts from UNLV, Las Vegas Metro, essentially saying there was a hotline set up for people where they could reunite with students. If there was any silver lining to this, school was out. Folks had gone home pretty much for the holidays at that point. No, you know what? Let me correct that. There were some final exams underway. Most of them were done. There were, I guess, a handful of folks finishing up. But again, most of the students were not there. So that was a plus. But again, they were, UNLV was reiterating they wanted folks to shelter in place. The police are moving through the buildings one at a time. Don't leave. Setting up a hotline for information and reunification of those students and faculty who were on campus. And again, letting folks know that the suspect is dead, the threat is over, and everybody was safe. So there was some social media being done, but again, as I mentioned before, a lot of it seemed to be driven by what the media was already finding out. And I have a quote here. How soon did the first breaking tweet from Las Vegas Metro go out? I'm not quite sure, but I think the first breaking tweet, I think it was at around 11:45, which wasn't too far after the shooting, where they did confirm that an active assailant event was underway. So they were quick about the first tweet, just sort of backing up what was already going out from the university, but they didn't have much more after that. Next slide, please. So the news conference, police finally scheduled a news conference for 5 p.m. local time, which was 6 hours after the shooting and 3 hours after the initial briefing. During this conference, it was decided that Las Vegas Sheriff McMahill, Governor Joe Lombardo, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Director of Security were going to speak. However, during this news conference, no new updates were provided. Instead, it seemed like the focus of law enforcement was to basically just talk about how great it was, what the first responders had done. In fact, as I had mentioned before, they sort of heralded their cooperation when they did the Harvest Fest and all the training that they had compiled since that time, and how prepared they were. And they certainly weren't wrong. I mean, again, this guy had a list of targets, and obviously he wasn't finding who he was looking for. Otherwise, it would have been there would have been a lot more bloodshed. But even so, I mean, the detectives were on the scene very quickly, and I think it probably took less than 5-6 minutes for them to actually finally, eliminate the threat. So it happened very quickly. Could have been a lot worse. Who knows what this guy would have done had he kept going. But anyway, interestingly enough, though, the news conference didn't really offer a whole lot in the wake of trying to explain to folks why the airport had been closed and reopened, why the highway out on 15 had been closed and reopened. The roads around UNLV were still closed way after 8 p.m. as they were clearing out these buildings. So next slide, please. I wanted to give you an example of the news conference, and I've got videos. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this. The first was Sheriff McMahill. Again, just we do a lot in our trainings with Argonne on preparing for news conferences, knowing who's going to talk, having a good structure for how you're going to present information, how you're going to present the speakers, stagecraft, as they say, all the things that go into delivering a solid message that projects confidence, as well as gives the media and the public new information and kind of an update as to where we are. But let's watch this from Mr. McMahill. Tell me at the end if you think he had done an adequate job updating folks at 6 hours later. Oops.
Sorry about that. I hit something wrong there. Let me know if you can or cannot hear the sound, and here we go.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. My name is Kevin McMahill, and I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. First, I would like to reiterate to all of you that there is no more ongoing threat to our community here in Las Vegas. I also like to tell you that we do know the identity of the suspect in this case, but I will not be releasing his name tonight until after the next of kin notification. As you all know, of course, this is a tragic day for all of us in Southern Nevada, and at approximately 11:45 a.m., LVMPD dispatch received reports of an active shooter at the UNLV campus. UNLV campus police responded to the scene and engaged the suspect immediately right outside of Beam Hall. LVMPD officers also responded simultaneously. I can tell you today, 3 of the victims are confirmed deceased. There is a 4th victim who suffered a gunshot wound and is now currently in Sunrise Hospital, upgraded to stable condition. In addition to that, there were 4 additional people who were transported from the scene to nearby hospitals suffering from panic attacks. 2 of our officers were treated at UMC for minor injuries, which were received while searching the vast rooms and buildings for victims at UNLV. Our hearts go out to the entire UNLV community.
Okay, so as you can see from that, I mean, he basically reiterated information that had already been posted on the news reports. Again, NBC News had been ahead of everybody in releasing this information. He sort of confirmed it. He did. We always like to emphasize the importance of using an empathy statement when you're talking, especially about people who've been killed. And he did. He put that at the end. It felt a little bit like an afterthought to me, but again, and you got to cut law enforcement a little bit of a break. This isn't like how we practice, chemical releases or what all the little hazardous things we come up with some of these exercises. Sometimes in an active shooter, clearly there's still a lot going on, a lot of investigation underway. They're still trying to clear classrooms at this point. So you can understand there's obviously a lot that's not known. But does anyone feel like, I mean, they learned anything new, or that was an adequate amount of information from the sheriff? I mean, feel free to throw it in the chat or sound it out if you have a comment. See one hand up, Amy. I don't know if you have to unmute her or. Okay, so Marilyn McLeod said it confirms that what went out of the news, which helps. It's a trusted source, absolutely. Amy's hand is.
He seemed kind of nervous to me. I don't know. I thought he could have maybe led with the condition of the victims first, since he wasn't going to release the name of the gunman.
Right.
The panic attack comment seemed unnecessary. That wasn't the most pressing thing to fill in, I don't think. And I didn't really, I don't know, his demeanor kind of seemed nervous, heavy breathing. I didn't really feel at ease at all by his update. That was my takeaway from it.
All right, good comments. Good comments. And Amy, it sounds like you were finally able to get unmuted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think even if they didn't know a lot, it might have been helpful to say what they did know about the shooter. He wasn't a student, or maybe something along those lines, just to give a little bit more information to folks.
Okay. All right, good comments. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, good. And so moving to the next slide. So this is, and this certainly isn't meant to make the governor of Nevada look bad by any stretch. What's important about this is Joe Lombardo, if you don't remember, he was the sheriff of Las Vegas when the Harvest Fest shooting actually occurred, and he was the one that Donald Trump met with when he came to town. He was the one who was out front for every news conference, and he talk about your trusted source and the guy that everybody really counted on for new information. And quite frankly, I'd suggest, just a personal note, that I think one of the reasons why he got elected governor is because, I mean, he really showed a leadership style that impressed a lot of folks during what was a very difficult period of time. I mean, the shooting, I can't even begin to tell you how just overwhelming that was for anybody living in Las Vegas. I mean, everybody who lives here as a resident knows somebody who was down there at that concert. So anyway, but this was not his best effort. And again, when we talk about preparation and why it's important to have your ducks in a row, this is a good example of what happens when you don't. So if you go ahead and play the video.
Kevin, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I think it's important for people to realize the partnership that is formed as a result of my career at LVMPD and with Kevin, the sheriff himself, and the confidence that I was assured of when I got notified today. I had no doubt that the response would be appropriate, it would be swift, it would be quick, to the satisfaction of all the naysayers that we normally experience during critical incidents. And today, LVMPD did a fantastic job, along with the University PD did a fantastic job. And after the after action is settled here and our concern for the victims are bolstered and satisfied, I will be absolutely proud of the response of the first responders. I'll be absolutely proud of the community of UNLV, and I'll be absolutely proud of the community of Las Vegas and the state of Nevada.
I had some formal comments to be said, but the important piece is I'm here to show the solidarity between the community and the law enforcement community and ensure on behalf of the state of Nevada, we are here to help, provide resources to the benefit of the victims and to express my concern for the victims and favorable thoughts to the families and to ensure that we move forward as a society and as a community, and to assure the community we are doing everything within our ability to address these situations appropriately and with the knowledge that we receive on a continual basis. So, Kevin, thank you.
Hey. Little painful to watch even now. Thoughts? Anybody?
I'll jump in here again. He seemed like he was rambling a little bit. He didn't seem very empathetic. And I'm not really sure what he said after he was done. What was his point? I don't know.
Well, it seemed like he started out wanting you to know that all of this was his responsibility. That it was all the stuff he did that really kind of got this going. But yeah, good comments. What else? Anybody else? Somebody said Andy would never. Is that your governor? Would never do that kind of thing? Okay.
I thought it was weird how he said he was here to show solidarity. And I know in past communications courses demonstrating that, if he's talking about solidarity with police and other folks that, a lot of times they'd be in the background. It's kind of weird to say you're here to demonstrate solidarity instead of showcasing it through actions or other sort of speech. Directly saying it just seems really weird.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And he actually did that a couple of times. I mean, he said, well, we're here to make sure, there's resources for the victims. Well, at this point, you're not going to need a whole lot of resources for your victims, the 3 that are killed anyway. I'm here to, he used a lot of those words that made it sound like he was really framing himself as sort of some sort of, I don't know, symbol rather than actually saying anything of value to the response. I mean, if he had come out and said, well, I just want to hail the the cooperation between Las Vegas police and University police and the state's here to to help. Okay, great. I mean, then okay, thank you for stepping up and showing us that. But yeah, you're right. He really, the whole message kind of got lost in the translation. So, but again, my sense is, and I know this for sure, but I believe the governor just sort of showed up and said, okay, I want to talk too. And so there wasn't a lot of time to prepare for what he was going to say. Which is interesting because he even tells you, I had prepared remarks, but I decided not to use them. So it's like, well, maybe you should have probably read off your paper because that would probably put you in. Yeah. So again, it can show you really just how important it is to be prepared for this type of event. So and to do a news conference. So next slide, please. So this was a very, very important. So a lot of rumors and misinformation flying. As you can imagine, about the shooting as I was following this. One post on X, which is formerly Twitter, obviously, was by a user who goes by the name of Dr. Jeremiah Emanuel. And he likes to post clips about FBI cover-ups. So he basically posted that this was going to be an FBI cover-up. He shared some news contents. And of course, if you're involved in the process of media monitoring or social media monitoring, then you're used to Dr. Emanuel. He shows up and typically you either A, choose to ignore him, or B, you can refute what he says through an official post of your own, I guess. But in this case, it was important to note that the message was reposted by more than 600 users and gained more than 1,500 likes over the first hour or two of this event. So by the end of the evening, 790,000 people had seen it. And the most significant part of that is it pushed any legitimate news updates further down in the tags. So it was harder for people looking for information to actually get it, the official information. So very important to know that a lot of this garbage that gets posted, the more it gets liked and the more it gets shared, the more prominent it becomes over the actual news and information that's being released. So again, another good argument we like to make for why it's so important to have a robust media monitoring presence as well as a social media presence where possible, because again, reposting your official stuff to drive people to your information is really the key here. Otherwise, they're getting it from Dr. Emanuel. Next slide, please. Again, in the early going, a number of casualties and shooters was so exaggerated that a Metro police officer working at a safety shelter in Las Vegas told the simple students, just wait for updates, because I can't tell you, right? We saw as many as 26 at one point. Just reports left and right, people with video, taking video of the crime scenes. Again, the officer at the church there in Las Vegas told folks, don't rely on what's being reported on social media. There's inaccurate accounts as far as the multiple shooters and the fatalities. In some cases, they were saying double digits. So again, just a lot of misinformation flying right out of the gate. And the question earlier was, when did Metro post? And they did post almost right away. But if you look at the posts, which I did keep a collection of them, the first hour or two, again, there was nothing there. It was just, stay behind doors, stay sheltering in place. They did, confirm for NBC News that yes, the shooter is dead. And then of course, 2 hours later did the briefing about the threat being over. But again, that was it. There was no other information coming off of social media from UNLV or Las Vegas for quite a long time. So as you can imagine, this rumor mill is flying on social media as all of this information is being sorted. Next slide, please. Yeah, one more rumors and misinformation. In a post with breaking and urgent, one account reposted a video of police and SWAT cars racing down the street near UNLV with the caption, "Wow, per scanner reports 28 people shot at UNLV in campus shooting. Campus is still in lockdown." Well, first of all, there was no scanner that said 28 people were shot. But, and of course, naturally, you're going to have folks taking video of the response without a real clue as to what's going on. That post itself, it gained 733 reposts, 866 likes, and had over 500,000 views by Wednesday night. And the post was made around 1 o'clock Wednesday by Brian's Breaking News and Intel, which is a blue check market account that claimed to have worked at a company called Royal Intel. So, it's amazing how many folks are experts. I remember back in the Boston Marathon bombing years and years ago that there was one individual who was actually monitoring scanner traffic from the cops as they were looking for that last suspect and posting it on Reddit as official police information, which prompted the police department to come out and have to repeatedly say that if you're getting your information from any other source, it's not official information, because this guy's hearing things from a response that's still fluid and underway. So again, just real important to keep your fingers on the pulse of the rumors and misinformation. Next slide, please. So key takeaways from this event. Obviously, again, 2 hours may be a little long to provide the public with key information. Again, we had airports closed, highways closed, hospitals, emergency activity. You got a town that's jumpy like Las Vegas after the Harvest Fest shooting, where emergency rooms were literally inundated with patients like a war zone. And you've got hospitals. We kept seeing posts from hospitals saying, "We're ready, we're ready, we're ready." Bringing in extra doctors, trying to get extra blood, all this kind of stuff like they did a couple of years back, and none of that was necessary. But again, a lot of folks confused as to what was going on. Some folks going into trying to get closer to the university to post pictures and things like that. Just really important that you get the information out as quickly as you can. Social media monitoring, I think it needs to be broader in scope. I mean, again, they were responding apparently to NBC News, but that was about it. I mean, they weren't responding to any other comments, any other rumors or misinformation. And as I pointed out, there was a lot of stuff still being posted as late as 8, 9, 10 o'clock that night that was gaining major traction. That the folks at UNLV and the Metro Police weren't doing anything to refute. News conference, again, I think we've said enough about that. It's just important that you're prepared, even if you don't have a lot of information. There's things you can talk about. You can talk about your plans, policies, procedures, protocols, things that you're doing to try to gather information. There's stuff you can say. And again, we did see a good use of phone lines. They did have a couple of hotlines that were providing some decent information on where to shelter and where to reunify with your students and faculty that were still on campus and being impacted. So. Next slide, please. So the aftermath, of course, they were able to identify the victims, the professors. It was a professor named Jerry Chang, 64. He was a professor of business at the university. Patricia Navarro Velez, who was an assistant professor of accounting, and then Naoki Takamura, who was an associate professor of Japanese studies. The fourth was a 38-year-old male visiting professor. They didn't identify him really even to the end. He eventually recovered from his wounds and went home. But again, a lot of information gleaned from this in terms of communications. The response part, really kudos to them. They weren't wrong. They had practiced a lot of exercises, a lot of training, a lot of collaboration to be ready to respond to, unfortunately, the next big shooting. But again, from a communications perspective, as you can see, I think there was a lot of things that they can glean from it. And your next question is, well, did you share this with the Metro Police? And the answer is no. I've worked with their PIOs before. They feel as if they've got a pretty good handle on things. But again, we look at these as communications professionals, as learning opportunities. We see where things work well and others don't, and we try to learn. And do the best we can. So that's why I wanted to share it with you. And with that, next slide, please. That's my presentation. I hope that you were able to get something out of it. And again, it was a powerful piece for me because again, we had folks who were down there involved in it. So I wanted to be sure that I gave it its due attention. So yeah, thank you so much, Marilyn, for your comments. And does anybody have any questions?
Everybody give Jeff a round of applause virtually. And if you have a question, again, you can put it into chat or you can unmute yourself and ask him directly if you would like to. I am going to pull this screen down and go back to a different presentation. There we go.
Any questions?
Yeah, Jeff, as a father of, you said you had daughters down there working on their degrees. I know you were able to find out pretty early that they were okay, but was there anything additional information that you would have liked to have had more readily or something as someone on the outside looking in on this, having loved ones and family members there? Is there something that you wish had come out immediately or hadn't come out?
Yeah, unfortunately, Ryan, I'm a little biased because I'm a former news guy. So when I go to look at the news, I want the news, I want the story, and at this point, we're getting a lot of text messages from UNLV saying, again, repeating that a lot of people potentially hurt. We had one of my daughter's boyfriend was actually talking to someone down at the school who was getting information at the school that a number of people had been hurt. Upwards of 13, 14 people were going to be transported to the hospital. So, you're getting this information from the inside, and of course it's all wrong. So, again, I think you got to give them a little latitude. It's a police response. And so, but, obviously safety is the number one key over our need for information. But it just seemed like it was a frustrating process because they had to have known some things early on that they could have released within the first hour and a half. And we were still looking for the information at 8 o'clock at night. So, nothing specific, but again, just my news knows kind of wishing that they had at least given us a little more of the who, what, when, where, how early on so we could, be properly informed when we were getting all these other rumors. So. And I'm seeing a couple of comments in the chat. I see somebody asked about the John Bobel, any suggestions on which channels to monitor and how many people you need to monitor those channels? Well, it's every, I did a uniform search of UNLV, and there was no fewer than 30 to 35 different news agencies who were tracking the story. So some of them were local, some of them were international and national. Some of those you would expect, such as Fox News, CNN. Again, NBC News seemed to have the news before everybody else. And of course, then there's blogs and influencers and stuff like that. So the answer to the second part is how many people do you need? You're never going to have enough. I mean, you need a robust team of folks. I know the virtual operation support team concept is kind of gone now, the way of the dinosaur, but if you can get people dialed in to help search for rumors and misinformation and put in those key hashtags and addresses and whatnot to track, that's going to go a long way to helping you kind of get a feel for what's out there. What lessons learned from 2017 impacted the way things played out? You're obviously talking about the Harvest Fest shooting, I'm assuming, and that's, yeah, obviously most of the response lessons learned, how to get the police in and out of an area really quickly, the run, hide, fight. I really impressed by that, by the way, because, we always talk about, you hear about that in active assailant training, run, hide, fight. But they didn't mince any words with the text. I mean, it was the most alarming, direct, powerful text message you could ever get. Run, hide, fight. And so, I mean, it was an amazing attention grabber that got everybody to do exactly what they needed him to do. Again, it probably helped that this guy was looking for specific people. But again, you have to believe that the quick response, not only by the folks who hunkered down and sheltered in place, but also the police who responded to the scene as quickly as they did, probably helped keep this from becoming another Harvest Fest. As far as the stuff that hasn't changed, communications, I mean, it was understandable during Harvest Fest because you had so much going on. I mean, it really truly was a war zone. I mean, a lot of the wounded were being transported by personal vehicles and stuff. They just didn't have enough response vehicles. But again, in this situation, I mean, I think you've got people who are in positions of authority, such as the governor and the police chief and all, who have information that they can provide, and it's just important that you let the public know what's going on when you know it, rather than waiting. So, any other questions? Should an agency pick one channel to publish updates? The Boston Police will Police for the shooter. It just depends. I mean, as you know, John, every platform is different. I mean, the age group that looks at Facebook is different than the age group that looked at Twitter. And now with all these other platforms popping up every day, I mean, you can certainly make an argument for other, everything from Instagram right on up. But if you establish early on what you're going to use, and the public and the media knows that's the site you're gonna use, and they'll know where to go. So, for example, we've seen agencies such as Las Vegas Metro, they'll rely on Twitter. I think I didn't recall seeing a single Facebook post from them. Everything went out on X. The same with UNLV, everything went out on X. So, and that's been pre-established. If you read any of their communications, they'll tell you that, they've been in an emergency, go to their Twitter account, go to their X account and see what they're posting. So again, just important that you establish it, much like Boston PD did during the Marathon bombing, that this is where you're going to get your news. So any other questions? Hopefully I answered all yours. Anybody else?
I have a question. This is Jesse from KYM. You can hear me? And hopefully this was an answer, but I'm curious, what would you like to see better from a networking side of things between different agencies involved, with regard to how communication just flows, between the school, between the state, between local entities, and what kind of methods would you like to see implemented to help that flow of information?
That's a very good question. And really the bottom line, it boils down to just collaboration. I mean, it was clear that the response agencies such as the UNLV police and the Las Vegas Metro police and the FBI, they had all worked together from a criminal side. They had all responded to things and practiced things. To this day, I don't think the communications people talked at all. I really don't. And all the research I did, and even going back here recently, kind of checking in on it just to be sure I had all the up-to-date information. I don't think any meetings occurred whatsoever between the communications folks. It was Las Vegas Metro was doing their thing, UNLV was doing their thing, the governor showed up and did his thing, which of course is always going to take precedence over everybody else. So, it was just one of those things where, a conversation like this one right here, a lessons learned conversation would probably go a long way to helping that collaboration. I don't have intimate knowledge of how Metro or UNLV conducts exercises or training or whatnot, but clearly having at least a monthly conversation or a quarterly conversation to how you're going to communicate, what the channels you're going to use, who's going to monitor, what kind of information you're going to put out and when. Those are all kind of really important aspects of crisis communications that seem to be missed because you had 3 or 4 different agencies doing their own thing. And again, in the early going, you can sort of expect that it's going to be the sheriff and the governor and all the lead folks, out there giving that information. And so, they've got a lot going on clearly, but they've got a whole staff of PIOs and communications people working for them. And again, I didn't see a whole lot of collaboration between those groups. So again, I think that they could really benefit from some more of that. I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Jeff,
For
there's
discussion.
one more in chat.
Okay.
From Tommy. He asked, what about campus resources? You mentioned that several folks were sheltering in place until the evening. What can we do to get people out faster or more efficiently after an all clear? He said the original alert was solid, but beyond that, he's not so sure.
Yeah, good comment. And I'm not sure why I don't see that. Sorry for missing that one. I don't know that there is, Tommy, on that one, because you have to do your due diligence. I mean, again, you had rumors that there were multiple shooters. I know they had established that there, early on, that there was only one and that they had put him down. So, I mean, I guess you could go and say, all right, everybody come on out. But, I know the law enforcement, their method and process is to go door to door and check and get everybody out. So it's like the sheriff had said in his news conference. I mean, it's a pretty big campus. I mean, it's not the biggest campus in America, but there's a lot of buildings over there where that shooting occurred. So you're walking into the student union, there's classroom buildings, it was a residence hall nearby. I mean, I don't know that there is an easy, quick way other than just having, law enforcement resources, having enough people. And of course, you saw that, two of the cops ended up getting injured somehow. I think somebody fell down the stairs and something else happened. So, you're taking two out of play, but unfortunately it is a lengthy process, and that's something to consider. I mean, if anything, perhaps better communication with those folks, pushing out those text messages like the run, hide, fight one that basically, continues to explain to them, hey, cops are clearing the building, they're coming to you next, they just cleared Beam Hall, they're going to this one next, or just somehow some kind of process for letting the folks sheltering know that the police are on the way. But yeah, unfortunately, there is just that accountability part that has to take place in that kind of event, and the number of people and buildings make that tough. So that's all I have. And like I said, unless there's any other final questions or comments, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me come in and present. And David has my email. If there's ever any follow-up questions or any resources we at Argonne can help provide, just let me know.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And I will post a copy of the recording to our YouTube channel. Jeff has sent me a copy of the presentation. I will share that in a follow-up email. Couple of quick announcements, upcoming schedule. We do have August, the National Economic Resilience Data Explorer is going to be a good presentation, hopefully give you a tool to find out a little bit more about your local community. September 18th, we have somebody coming on to talk about being a field PIO. So leaving your going out to an actual incident, how to get deployed, how to integrate into what they have going there, and then demobilize. And then in October, we're going to talk about the Kentucky qualification system. I have a lead speaker here that's going to talk about the credentialing system, Kentucky Emergency Management, and Kentucky's going to do specific for PIOs. So all exciting stuff coming on. Looking forward to it. And that will conclude it. So if there's no more questions,